We're going to talk about growing grass on clay. So this clay is compacted. It had a 58,000-pound dump truck driving over it. It is the original underlayment soil for this site. It is solid as a rock. Can we grow grass on it? I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, and this is the pad site for a container barn that's going to get installed here. And we don't want to grow grass on the rock, but we do want to grow grass around it. Now this site has had 2 or 3 rain events since I was last here, where I put down some seed. That seed is not going to be very effective, but it was old seed, so I just wanted to get it down. What we're going to do here is straw this earthworks. Now, how do we straw the earthworks for optimal benefit? We start where the rain starts, from the top. So what we're going to do is we'll outline this rock pad with straw, loosely spread, to allow us to shade and retain moisture on this earthworks. Because this earthworks is primarily clay, we want to make sure that water doesn't accumulate or the clay doesn't dry out and crack. So you can see right here, it's dried out and it's starting to crack. And what will happen the next time there's a rain event is water will go down into that crack and it will cause it to separate the materials. So we've had a rain event, it soaks up inside of the clay, and then the sun bakes the clay and causes it to crack like this. And then those cracks will allow water to get in and can cause this clay mound to saturate and collapse. So when they're done with the earthworks, that's not the last step. So what we'll do is we have a limited amount of clay, a limited amount of straw. It's almost an unlimited amount of clay. So we'll start strawing around from the rock out to the edges. And we'll get this whole area covered in with straw. Now we want a 60% coverage of long cut straw, or an 80% coverage if we were blowing shredded straw. Now you can put 50%, you can put 40%. The key is that we use a layering system to get in our grasses. Now something we do a little different. On this clay there isn't much topsoil, and we don't have the topsoil to bring in because we have to sift this topsoil from the silt fence in the area around. So what we'll do in that instance is we'll put down seed, we'll put down straw, light straw, maybe 50% coverage, maybe 60% coverage. The straw is not matted, it's very loose so that it shades the soil to prevent it from drying out, which retains moisture, gives the seed a good environment to germinate, builds up a humidity frame above the soil. But as we sift out our topsoil, we will then top dress with topsoil and additional seed. Now my method uses more seed than most methods, but it works with what you've got rather than hydro spraying it or spraying a mixture of shredded straw and seed that's encased. Because we're not just putting grass on here, we're putting down grass and clover and multiple types of grass, and so it's kind of a hodgepodge to give us a native cover that is going to sustain over time and become grass as a valuable resource. Now again, the grass will grow in the edges of the rock, and in order to string trim this or to keep it clean, we need to be able to maintain an edge. So I'll do a little bit of raking to rake up those rocks, but ultimately as the grass accumulates, we want to basically mow that edge and keep the edge clean to be able to mow. We want to be able to mow it where we're not knocking the rock back into the grass. But we would trace this surface first. Now, what do we do with the road? Now, you've noticed there's several rain events and we don't have any pooling of water. Everything's graded pretty good, but it won't stay like that unless there's grass growing. So on the hard surfaces, we need to concentrate a little bit more topsoil, maybe put down wood chips as a coverage, but grass will grow eventually on clay unless the clay continues to be compacted. So you can see here, there was water on the clay, and then the rain came, and then it dried up, and then it cracked like this. This cracking is not desirable. So again, we've got to cover this soil with whatever we've got and not try to get, we're not going to try to get grass on here right away. We're going to try to keep grading it to make it smooth, and then of course get some topsoil on it, get some wood chips on it, something for traction. Now, should we put in rock, for example? Well, rock costs a lot of money, and maybe we don't want a road here. Maybe this is not the place where we want a road. So I would suggest wood chips, shredded materials. We could put down some burlap coverage to maintain seed, to give it something to grow in. But once some more cracks, once the roots start getting into this clay, it'll start holding together a little bit better. But on our access points, we're not going to use our access points after wet weather. So we'll give all of our access points a rest during rainy seasons, and not drive on it until after 72 hours after the last rain. So let's talk about our walls here. I mentioned we're going to make some flails and bang these rocks, or crush this clay, pick the rocks out of it, pick the sticks out of it. What we're also going to do is throw topsoil up into this as we're seeding to kind of get it to fill in. Now, a hill like this is, as it has rocks in it, the rain will not soak into the rocks. The rain will go around the rock, and it'll expose the rocks over time. So we're going to take these rocks out and leave what remains. Now, the grass will grow in the cracks and crevices, and we can of course pick up additional rocks that we have in this area here, but we don't have this nice wooded coverage that's going to take grass a lot easier. And so we've got to keep cultivating this. And so what we'll end up doing is we'll use a giant paddle, and we'll smack this thing with a giant paddle as we're putting in grass seed, as we're throwing topsoil up on it. But we want to throw that topsoil, like, so for example, there's a little bit of topsoil right here. If we sift this out, get the rocks out of it, we want to throw it all the way to the top, because our bund is more important than the slope. So the bund needs to be secured. And so like this pile right here, you can shovel that out. The bund needs to be the most secure. And we secure the bund by layering in materials. Now, the layering of materials is adding that biomass that's necessary to get their feed of our plants. What other things can feed our plants to start growing the grass? Well, I can make this a complete course, but just as an idea is you can lime the area. Sometimes we'll fertilize in lime, but when it's clay like this, it's almost always a little bit of fertilizer. Now, I put in less fertilizer than's recommended, because I'm just simply dusting it in there as I'm putting in other materials and getting the grass growing. And then once the grass grows, we scythe the grass, use it as a mulch in areas where we need grass. So we might scythe from the top and lay it on the sides in order to start getting that biomass built up. Once the grass starts growing, we're looking for a 50% or better density. That means if you did a square foot and you measured how much of the area is covered, at least half of the area would have coverage as far as root stems and grass growing. You want to cut the grass like you would on a pasture. You want to leave the grass about 6 inches. You don't want to cut it short. And then you're going to keep going. Now, what if grass does not take on the sides? And there's some things that we might, shovel out or whatever. But what if grass doesn't take? Okay. Well, then we have to start using some geotextiles or some burlap. If you're trying to use natural materials, you're going to use burlaps. You're going to grade it a little bit more. So you're going to come back in here with shovels or a front end loader and scrape the soil up, mound it, and then throw it back up on the edges. Ideally, though, between paddling it and busting up some of this clay and then adding additional materials, the grass will eventually take. But again, the same rule applies when we're spreading straw for cover crops. Is all the straw you've got on all the square footage you have. So I'm going to take that truckload of material, mound it up here, and then start spreading it around the gravel area, and then work my way out to cover as much area as possible. And that way I've got something on the other areas. Now later, if we come back in with a chipper and chip all the trees and everything that were set aside, if we have some way of sifting out some of the topsoil, we can use the topsoil. The priority for topsoil would be the top of the terrace, the bund of the terrace, and the diagonal walls of the terrace. Again, which of those three have the highest priority? I would say the bund has the highest priority, because that is an edge that if it has saturated water on it, the water will run over the edge and cause channeling. And then this beautiful terrace will be a massive headache. So I'll start around the gravel area, because the hard gravel is going to wash water off faster, and we have a higher probability of retaining moisture with the straw and getting grass to grow near the rocks. Then I'm going to put the grass on the bund, on this top edge, because if we can grow grass there, we're in our best case scenario to secure that bund. Then the grass will go in the middle here on all the flat level areas, and then the grass will go the hay or straw. And you can use hay, by the way, because it has seeds in it, and we can just grow that kind of stuff. But that hay will go on the diagonals, and then as we work our way out, if we still have materials, we'll cover the rest of the area, even if it's just a dusting of straw. Because again, the straw, the hay, the biomass that we're putting on shades and protects the soil, allows the microorganisms and the biology of the soil to activate the seeds, feed the plant, and ultimately get deep quality roots in the ground. Those deep quality roots will give us grass that you can drive on, as well as grass that we can have as biomass. And then as that grass grows, we can cut it, let it grow long, cut it, and then cover more areas. So we're going to have it growing, cutting, spreading, layering, and ultimately into abundance. We will have grass on this surface by the end of summer. That is into the fall. We're going to have at least some grass in some areas, and then as it gets box graded or disturbed, we'll do the same cycle again, adding our seed, covering it with hay or straw, adding top dressings, minding whether we're driving on it when it's wet or when it's not wet, being mindful of where it grows and where it doesn't grow, and then ultimately letting it grow out, cutting it, spreading it, and the cycle continues. Grass is abundance. This grass can be part of your natural building. It can be part of your animal feed. It can be part of the cooling of the area, because it reflects a lot of heat rather than absorbing it. And it is the starting point of all system recovery. Now again, it can be cover crops. There are cover crops that are better suited for this kind of stuff. But those are cover crops that don't have rooting vegetables. So the only cover we'd put in here, which is summer, so putting it in, it's not going to help anything, is likely going to be clay and clover and hairy vetch. So clover and it will grow on clay, and hairy vetch will grow on clay. But those seeds are not going to tolerate the heat. So we got to get something down. And I just happen to have a garage full of old grass seed. So we're even putting in old grass seed. But this is going to grow. It's going to grow strong. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. You've seen my other videos where I've done this. It is a system for growing grass. If you were here in a class, we'd go into the nuances. We'd look at the soil conditions. We look at some of the challenges that are going to come up. I can see from patterns on the ground. If you are interested in that kind of thing, go in the comments below and say that you're interested. I'm going to give you a link to where you can use our contact page to contact and ask questions, or you can visit www.prosperityhomestead.org and ask your questions at the contact page. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this podcast. Let's see this success in your dreams. Let's see your homestead, your small farm get started. And if you have questions about doing that, please let me know.